Let me ask you a question if you understand. Sigmoid colon is part of the alimentary canal. Is the statement true or false? Sigmoid colon is part of the alimentary canal. Is the statement true or false?
False.
True or false? Danny, you say it is false
Yes.
why you say false? Because look, when you say alimentary canal, this is a tube, just tubes. You start from the mouth, oral cavity here, and you go to the esophagus here. Then you have stomach, you have the intestine, okay, small and the large, rectum, and so this is a tract, a canal. Anything outside this, okay, called accessory structures, like the teeth, somewhere here, tongue, uh, salivary gland, okay, and you have the liver, pancreas, as you see here. They are not directly connected to the tube, but somewhere they do secrete something into the tube. They are accessory structures. So if you look at this colon, colon means large intestine, sigmoid colon, just before the rectum. Is it part of the alimentary canal or accessory structure? Accessory organ. Just anyone can tell us. The sigmoid colon, you see it here, is it part of the alimentary canal or accessory digestive organ? That's the question. It's very easy. It is
The alimentary canal.
exactly. It is alimentary canal. It is part of the tube. You see, part of the tube. All right. Let me show you this. Here is a gallbladder which store bile, bile, and this bile is released into duodenum, small intestine. So this gallbladder is part of the alimentary canal or accessory organ.
Accessory organ.
An accessory organ, exactly. It's not part of the tube. Very good. Good. Now, this canal called alimentary canal, we can divide it into three parts. Upper digestive tract. The upper digestive tract comprised of mouth, esophagus, stomach. Okay, the mouth, esophagus, the stomach, the J-shaped organ here. Okay, so these structures are called upper digestive tract. And then the middle one, the middle is made up of the small intestine. You see, the one that you see in the middle here. This is called intestine, DJI. Don't forget the order. DJI. Okay, you have the duodenum, You have the jejunum and the longest ileum. Okay, so these are the three parts of the small intestine, also called the middle portion of the GI. The middle portion of the GI. So if you look at the duodenum, although it is short, it's very important for digestion. Why? Look, the pancreas secretes the juice to the duodenum. Okay, gallbladder release bile into duodenum. So the duodenum is very important as far as digestion is concerned, although it's short. But if you look at the jejunum and ileum, they're longer than duodenum, but basically they are involved in absorption. So this is the middle part. The lower part, the lower part is made up of cecum. Can you see the cecum here? Cecum is the border between colon and small intestine. This is the distended portion of the intestine. Okay, the distended portion of the intestine or the small intestine. So it's basically found between the large intestine, which is green, and small intestine, which you see is a kind of yellowish part. So this is a colon. Okay, and in the colon, you see the appendix also here, the small appendix, and then you have the colon. The colon you can divide it into three parts. This one ascend, it move up. That's what's called ascending colon. This one is straight, transverse colon, and this one descending colon. By the end of the descending colon, you have swollen parts called sigmoid colon. By the way, in Africa, we eat fibrous food, a food which is rich in fiber, like cabbage and all these things. So we, as compared to Western people, people living in Europe and America, our sigmoid colon is a little bit bigger inside, okay, in size, because we eat a lot of fiber-rich food. Fiber-rich food. If you look at the food of Western people, the food is not as such bulky. They eat very small but caloric food, so that will not make the colon bigger in size. Okay, just anatomically, you can differentiate when you look at the scan. It looks like bigger, and then you have the rectum. By the way, when the food is moving down, it is collected here in the rectum. Undigested food collected in the rectum, and water is absorbed, and the feces becomes dry, semi-solid. Okay, when it is distended, when the rectum is distended, what will happen? When undigested food accumulates here in the rectum, something happens. What will happen? There is peristalsis starting from esophagus, intestine, large intestine, movement. Always there is movement, 24/7 movement. When these undigested solid material accumulate in the rectum, something happens. Okay? Some of you can write in the chat section. The card here. What do you think happens when this thing happens? All right. Okay. Now, you see, this is the tube that you find, the GIT. The food is moving along the gut like this, and digestion takes place. And in the GIT, the responses are two. Don't forget this. There are two GIT responses. These are secretion and motility. Secretion and motility. These are the two GI responses. For example, for example, assume you are in the classroom. Assume you are in the classroom. Lunch time is approaching, past noon, like 1 p.m. What's happening to the GI? You are very long class in the morning, and you're still there in the class at 1 p.m. What is happening in the GI? You can tell us what's happening. You can think of the experience you have. A very extended lecture. You are in the class, sitting 4 hours up to 1 p.m. What kind of response you expect in the GIT? What kind of response? You never have the experience. Okay, secretion. What is secretion? What is secretion? You are right. There is secretion. But what is secretion? Okay, saliva, digestive enzyme. Okay, good. Stomach, acid, secretion. That's why you feel pain. You feel pain because our body anticipates food lunchtime. So it secretes digestive juice, especially in the stomach. It is acidic. So if you are not eating, that acid can digest the stomach and you feel pain. Okay, secretion. Another response is motility also. You hear noise in the stomach because there is increased motility of the stomach. The stomach undergoes contraction, relaxation. That's another response. Another response. Yes, stomach rumbles. Okay, that's another response. So these are the two major responses in the GI: secretion, motility. For example, if I show you a lemon, you salivate. You see secretion of saliva into the oral cavity. Okay, when you eat your lunch, motility increases so that the content in the intestine push down to the colon, rectum, and causes the acid to defecate. You see, so when something happens in the GIT responds by increasing or decreasing secretion motility. So these are the two responses. Don't forget this. Okay, don't forget. All right. Now, what are these processes that you find in the GIT? So basically, there are six process. in the GIT. One, ingestion, propulsion, digestion. Digestion are two types, mechanical and chemical. After the important substances are absorbed, unimportant ones are defecated, eliminated, eliminated. So let me briefly tell you about this process one by one. Ingestion means just taking enough food with the help of your hand. You just take the food into your mouth. That is ingestion means. Propulsion means movement. You swallow, and there is peristaltic movement of the esophagus, stomach, intestine. That is propulsion means. As you know, in the wall of the GIT or alimentary canal, there are smooth muscles which contract and relax, thereby pushing the food,
Excuse me, sir.
the bolus. Yes, go ahead.
It is like some of us are not getting you clearly. So can you be at least more audible?
Audible. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me change. Okay. So for hello, 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 hello. Can you hear me now? No?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is it better?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. So the propulsion is a kind of peristaltic movements with the help of the muscle on the wall of the GI. So it undergoes contraction and relaxation so that it push the bolus down to the anus. That is propulsion. Digestion, as I've told you, are of two types, mechanical and chemical. Mechanical digestion, there is no change in the nature of the food. In mechanical digestion, only the size of the food is changed. Only size. For example, with the help of the teeth, we grind, we chew, we masticate, we crush, and the big food will be changed into smaller pieces. So chewing is mechanical digestion. Okay? In the small intestine, there is segmentation, segmental movement. A segment of the small intestine contracts and relaxes. Thereby, it mixes the food with the digestive enzyme that is called mixing movement or segmentation, which is a mechanical digestion again. The stomach undergoes churning movement, very strong type. By the way, in the stomach, we have both mechanical and chemical digestion. Which one do you think is more important? Stomach, mechanical or chemical? Let me explain to you the difference between mechanical and chemical digestion. In mechanical digestion, as I've said, mechanical only size change. But in the case of chemical digestion, the nature of the food is changed. Breakdown of the food. Enzymes are involved. As you know, enzymes are sensitive to pH, temperature, concentration dependent. So in chemical digestion, polysaccharides converted into monosaccharides, proteins converted into amino acids, fats converted into glycerol and fatty acid. You see, the nature of the food is changed in chemical digestion. But in mechanical digestion, only the size of the food is changed. So what I'm saying is, in the stomach, we have both chemical and mechanical digestion. Which one is more important? Chemical or mechanical? In the stomach. You can write on the chat section. Huh? Which one do you think is more important? The chemical or mechanical? I know you. Huh? Yeah, most of you are saying chemical. I know. That's why I'm asking you this question. It's not chemical. It's not chemical. The most important digestion in the stomach is mechanical digestion, churning, mechanical digestion. Because look, when you swallow the food has a shape of a ball. We call it bolus. But the stomach contracts vigorously, very strong contraction in the stomach, converting that ball into soup type of consistency. We call it chyme. Very strong contraction in the stomach. By the way, the wall of the stomach is made up of very strong muscles. So the contraction is very, very, very strong. It converted it to liquid form, soup form, chyme. Okay, chyme. The chemical digestion is there, but it's not as such a must. Because as you know, in the stomach, protein digestion begins. But the stomach secretes only one enzyme, pepsin. If pepsin is not secreted, it's not a problem because the pancreas can do better in the duodenum. You see, that's why I say chemical digestion is not a must in the stomach. What is more important is the mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion. Now, we'll talk later in the stomach a little bit more on this. So motility in the GI, we call it propulsive movements in the GIT are two types.
the mixing movements, propulsive movements. These are the two basic types of movements in the GIT. Mixing movement means a portion of the alimentary canal contract and relax. Thereby, it mixes the food with the enzyme, the digestive enzyme. Just mixing, like the one you do when you are making a dough to make a bread. Just like that, mixing. The other type of movement is called propulsive movement. This one is a movement that is moving, as you see from the name, propulsive movement, moving the food in certain part of the GIT down to the anus. There is a law called law of the gut. According to this law, peristalsis heads from the mouth to anus. Peristaltic movements are pushing the food towards the anus so that in the rectum it accumulates, okay, leading to rectal distension and defecation. So when there is peristaltic movement, always, most of the time, the food is pushed towards the anus. But sometimes there is retropropulsion. Can you give me one example of this? Retropropulsion? Joy, you have a question? You raise your hand. Can you give me one example of retropropulsion, meaning propulsive movements are moving towards the mouse? Can you give me? Retro means opposite. Retropropulsion. Very good, Mikhail, very good. Vomiting. In vomiting, the propulsive movements are not from mouth to the anus, but opposites towards the mouth. That is called retroperistalsis or retropropulsion. Very good. So remember, motility of the GIT, there are two types. The mixing movement, which are local, which mix the food with the secretion. The second type of movement is propulsive movement, also called peristalsis, which move from the mouth to anus. Good. Well, so after this digestion, which is chemical and mechanical, important substances or the end of digestion, like here, monosaccharides, amino acids, fatty acid, these are the end of digestion. The products are absorbed via blood and lymph, circulates and reach to most body tissues for consumption. What is not absorbed accumulates in the rectum, elicits defecation reflex and will be eliminated. You see, so absorption and defecation are the other processes of the GI. So the GIT in general, as you see, as we discussed before, it is a tract from the mouth to the anus, and the total length is about 4.5 meters. About 4 meters is the intestine. You see, the intestine is the longest, almost 4 meters the intestine. The rest is just 0.5 meter. You have the stomach and the esophagus. So most of the GIT is made up of intestine. Okay, and maybe if you remember your physiology class, homeostasis. What are the components of homeostasis? Homeostasis. components of homeostasis. Homeostasis means, you know the definition of homeostasis. Who can tell us? Homeostasis. Maintenance of constant internal condition. So to maintain constant internal condition, our body respond. So to respond, there are components. What are the components of any homeostatic mechanism? Okay, nervous system. Yes, nervous system is a component. But okay, let me say this. The first thing in homeostasis. What is the first thing? Okay, very good. Very good. Okay. Receptors, stimulus. Yes. Yes. First, there should be a stimulus, a change. That is the first thing. In our body, there must be a change. That change is detected by receptors. You see? The change, the stimulus, detected by receptors. After that, the detected change should reach to the control center via neurons. Now the nervous system come here. Sensory neurons transmit the sensory signal to control center. The control center analyze, interprets the information. After that, the control center send command to effectors. Command to the effectors via motor neuron or hormones. You see, motor neurons and hormones are messengers which transmit the command to the effectors. What are effectors? What are the effectors? Some of you mentioned here in the chat section, effectors. What are the effectors? What they do? First of all, when you say effectors, what are they? What are the effectors? What are the effectors? Effectors respond. You said it, yes. But what are these effectors which respond? Okay. Yes. Yeah, Nixon, you said muscle. Yes. Any other? Muscle, yes. Glands, very good. Festus, yes. Glands, very good. Look, the effectors are muscle and glands. How does muscles respond? Muscles respond by contracting and relaxing. You see, that is peristalsis and segmentation. Muscles respond by contracting and relaxing. Glands respond by increasing secretion. Salivary gland, pancreas, these are glands. When they are stimulated, they secrete. You remember the two responses of the GIT are secretion and motility. Secretion and motility are results of muscle contraction and glandular secretion. Glandular secretion. Okay. Yeah, some of you are mentioning here sweat glands, blood vessels, etc. Yes, in general, you are right. Blood vessels are muscles, sweat glands are glands. But when we are specific to the GIT, we need to be specified. For example, what is a stimulus that bring a response in the GIT? What is a stimulus? Tell me. You see, in general, in homeostasis, there is a stimulus, receptor, sensory neuron, control center, motor neuron, and hormones, effectors, response. This is in general components of a homeostatic mechanisms. Now, let's be specific to the digestive system. Specific. So in the digestive system, what are the stimuli which triggers a response? What kind of stimulus you expect? All right, very good. Very good. Smell of the food, presence of the food. Very good. Very good. Yes. So, presence of the food. For example, a smell of the food, anticipation of the food, thinking of the food. All this can elicit a response. Okay? All this can elicit a response. Smell of the food. Yeah, hunger is, by the way, hunger. Let me explain to you the example I gave you before. You are in the classroom, 2 p.m. Look, you feel hungry. Your body anticipate food and respond. Your body anticipate. You see, thinking alone can trigger a GI response. That's why the stomach secretes acid and you feel pain. That's why as your stomach contracts, motility increases. That's why there is a noise in your stomach. You see? So it's not only the distension of the stomach which trigger response. No, that do, of course. But in addition to that, thinking alone, smelling, sight can elicit a response. Can elicit a response. But basically, like the major GI responses, very strong contraction, large secretion takes place when the food reaches the stomach and the stomach distend. In the wall of the stomach, for example, there are receptors called stretch receptors. When the stomach distend, these receptors in the wall of the stomach activated. They are called mechanoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors, which detect the mechanical stimulus, distension. Distension. Distension brings contraction. Okay? The other thing is a chemical. For example, when you eat, by the way, the type of the food you eat can affect motility and secretion. We'll talk later. The chemical stimulus. Are you eating carbohydrate food, rich food, protein rich food, fat rich food? It matters. We'll talk later. For example, when you eat a food which is very rich in fat, okay, what do you think will happen to your appetite in the rest of the day? Your appetite is inhibited or stimulated? If you eat fat rich food, what will happen to your appetite in the rest of the day? Will it be stimulated or inhibited? Yes. Yeah. Benjamin, Andrew, you're right. Inhibited. Inhibited. You see, this is an indication that there are chemoreceptors in the GIT. Chemoreceptors, which detect the type of chemical in the food, thereby affecting the response of the GI. Okay, so these are the major receptors. After detection, There is a response, there is integration, control center. Where do you find the control center? Where do you find the control center? Can you tell me? Where do you find the control center? You know what the control center do is it receives signal, it receives sensory signal, analyze, okay, analysis, interpretation of the signal. So where are these centers located? Okay, let me see your response. Specifically brainstem. Very good. Very good. Very good. So these are, we call them in general nervous system. Yes, nervous system, we divide it into two, peripheral and central. So the central nervous system, CNS. CNS again are two, brain and spinal cord. But these centers are not in the spinal cord, in the brain. Which part of the brain? The brain stem. You see? So your responses in the chat make sense. Some of you say nervous system, some of you say CNS, some of you say brain, and a very specific one, brain stem. There is a center. We'll talk later. Swallowing center, vomiting center, medulla oblongata. Okay? Is that all? That's the only center we have? Maybe if you look at you kill a goat or a sheep, and if you look at the stomach or intestine, look, the animal is dead. The animal is dead. But if you dissect and see the intestine or stomach, the stomach contracts and relax. You see, there is no brain. The animal is dead. The animal is dead. But the gut, intestine, stomach undergo contraction and relaxation. What does it tell you? It tells you that in the wall of the GIT that controls motility and secretion, these centers are local centers, intrinsic control, enteric nervous system. Musa and Kevin, you mentioned it here. ENS, enteric nervous system. These are the neurons in the wall of the GIT, which detect, analyze, respond by their own. If you read book, any physiology book, there is a statement that goes like this. The gut has its own mini brain called ENS, enteric nervous system. That's a mini brain of the gut. So what is the role of the brain? The role of the brain is just to modify this response, not to bring the response, to modify it, either to increase or decrease. Okay? By the way, from the brain, there are neurons. Maybe I'm not sure you are aware of these neurons called autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. You have this discussion before? Do you have this discussion before? Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Are you aware or not aware? If you are not aware, no problem. I will leave it. If you are aware, I will tell you a bit about this. Sympathetic and parasympathetic. Have you covered this in previous courses? Yes or no? Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. These are the neurons coming from the brain and spinal cord. Okay, I think, yeah, some of you say yes. Okay, good. Look, what I'm saying is the GIT has its own mini brain called ENS, enteric nervous system. So the GIT has intrinsic control. It controls its activity by its own, but it is under extrinsic control by the brain or CNS, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. So these nerves that are coming from CNS are mainly two types, sympathetic, parasympathetic. So the sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons increase or decrease the activity of local center. Okay? Which one increase the activity of local center? Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Which one? Which one do you think stimulates, increase the activity of intrinsic control or enteric nervous system? Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So most of you are saying sympathetic. Okay, now parasympathetic. Which system is called rest and digest? Which one? Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Rest and digest. Yes, parasympathetic. Parasympathetic. So the parasympathetic neurons amplify, stimulates enteric neurons. That's why the parasympathetic nervous system is called rest and digest. It stimulates GI response, motility and secretion. Motility and secretion. The sympathetic inhibits. As you know, sympathetic is fight or flight. Sympathetic increase heart rate, breathing rate, when we are anxious, when you do exercise, whatever. So sympathetic stimulate cardiovascular respiratory system, but inhibit digestive system. Is that clear? Is that clear? What I said, is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. Okay, now let me say a little bit more on this. I'm expanding on it. So what are the receptors of the GIT? The receptors in the GIT, basically there are two, mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors. In some books, it adds also osmoreceptors, but osmoreceptors are also called chemoreceptors. So they are basically two, mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors. So these receptors respond to stretch, pH. pH is chemical, pH, and the presence of the substrate, end product of digestion, whether the end product of digestion is it fat, protein, carbohydrate, they detect and affect our appetite, all this. And also initiates reflexes, as we said before. These reflexes activate or inhibit secretion from digestive gland. They also activate motility, mix lumen content, and also peristalsis, move them along. So in general, let me give you one example, one practical example to summarize this. I will give you a case. I want you to explain that case with the help of our discussion. The case is this. You have a small brother, baby brother. Okay, 2 years old. You feed the baby food. What will happen to the baby? The question is, you feed your baby brother a food. When the baby is full, what do you think will happen to him? What do you think will happen to the baby when he's full? Tell me. Up to now, we're discussing about how the GI detect, analyze, respond. Now, the case I gave you, you feed your baby brother a food. When the baby is full, something happens. What is it? Okay, he will sleep. Okay. Interesting. Of course, they sleep. He may vomit. Yeah, yeah, exactly. When he may vomit or choke when it is excessively full, overfilled. Okay, yes. Assume the baby is full physiologically, not the baby is not overeating. No, normally the baby is full, not overeat. Belching, okay. Belching is when usually when we eat fast, we eat air with the food, and that air is, when the stomach is churning, undergoes churning movement, converted into chyme, that air is moving out. We belch like this. It's belching, just expelling the gas. But the baby do something else. Assume the baby is not the baby didn't overeat. Okay, I see here, Sharon. Stretch receptors in the stomach stimulated. Okay, good. The stomach stretch. Now what happened? The stomach distend, stretch. You're right. Oh, Lister, okay, you're right. Defecates, exactly. Look, when the stomach distend, on the wall of the stomach, there are stretch receptors. Stretch receptors. And in babies, CNS is not mature. Central nervous system is not mature. CNS control is weak. So what controls GI activity is the enteric nervous system, CNS alone. So when the stomach is distended, it responds by what? By undergoing contraction of the whole GI down, from the stomach down. Contractility increases. The stomach contract, small intestine contract, colon contracts, everything is pushed down to rectum, and the rectum distend. And that distension leads to defecation. That's why babies defecate. Immediately when they are full, they defecate. Any student who answers this question will be the student of the day. What is the name of this reflex? If you are asked, what is the name of this reflex that leads to defecation? Stomach distension leads to increased contractility of the colon and then defecation. So what is the name of this reflex? Hmm? What is the name of this reflex? Let me see how you respond. Oh, wow. I think you read your notes. I'm really happy. Gastrocolic reflex. Excellent. Exactly. Gastrocolic reflex. Gastrocolic reflex. Excellent. You know, in naming of a reflex, the first name is where the stimulus is there. Gastro, stomach, distension. The second name is the structure which respond, colon, large intestine, which contract, pushing the content down to the rectum according to the law of the gut, leading to defecation. That's why this reflex is called gastrocolic. Stomach distend, and then the colon contracts. Peristalsis movement, leading to rectal distension and defecation. Very good. Wow. Okay, good. Good. But you know, in adults, we have a similar response. When eat a food, our lunch, our stomach is distended, we want to go to toilet because of this motility, gastrocolic reflex. But we usually, the CNS control this response. So we contract the sphincter and delay defecation. We can delay defecation and wait time. So when the time is appropriate, we go to toilets and defecate. So in adults, because of the CNS control, extrinsic control, we can delay defecation. But babies, there is a training called toilet training. We usually train them by the age of 3 or 4. So they start, delaying defecation when this reflex is on. Good. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is regarding the GIT. I told you that in the wall of the GIT, there are 3 types of muscles, right? Skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle is heart. Skeletal muscle is a muscle which is found on the bones. That's why they are called skeletal muscles. Smooth muscles are muscles of the internal organs, like the GIT. So, in the GIT, we have basically smooth muscles. But do you have skeletal muscles also in the GIT? Yes or no? Do we have skeletal muscles in the GIT?
No.
Okay. Okay, let me revise to you. As I've said, muscles are 3 types: skeletal, smooth, cardiac. The smooth muscle and cardiac muscle are involuntary. We can't control them. Okay? Which one you control? We control skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are muscles tied to the bones. So these ones we can control. Their contraction, relaxation. Like when you move your hand like this, it's skeletal muscles, voluntary muscles. So I'm asking, most of the muscles in the GIT are smooth muscles, involuntary. We can't control peristalsis. No, we can't, because the muscles are smooth. My question is, do we have skeletal muscles in the GIT? Think of any muscles in the GIT we can control. It's contraction and relaxation.
In the mouth.
In the mouth. Which one? You're right. Which one in the mouth? You're right. Muscles of mastication. Huh? Muscles of mastication. Tongue, skeletal muscle. Okay, the pharyngeal muscles. The first 1/3 of the esophagus, skeletal. For example, if you swallow a food, look, we'll talk later, next period. When you swallow a food and your friend is saying, please, oh, you eat a very poison food, and then you can vomit it out like this, because the first portion of the esophagus is skeletal muscle, striated muscle, voluntary muscle. Okay, once it passes the first 1/3 of the esophagus, now it's over. You can't control it because it's peristalsis. It's a smooth muscle. It goes down till where there is another place where a skeletal muscle is found. Another place. That is, yes, exactly. Yeah, lucky. It is external anal sphincter. Yes, external anal sphincter. Exit point in the anus. That sphincter, you know, the anal sphincter, there are two. Inside there is internal, outside there is external. The external one is skeletal. We can voluntarily contract and relax so that we can delay defecation. Okay? So at the entry and exit point, the muscles are skeletal. Just to control ingestion, to control defecation. Okay? That is one thing that you need to know. And the other thing is, look, these smooth muscles are of two types in general. Most of the GIT, they are connected by gap junctions. Gap junctions. You remember junction, gap junction and tight junction. So if the cells are connected by gap junction, by the way, have you covered cardiovascular module course or not yet? Cardiovascular. I think you finished the cardiovascular module. Is that? I think so. Some of you. Cardiovascular. So, okay, no problem. Heart. How many units you have in the heart? Unit means structures which contract and relax together, treated as one unit. So how many units you have in the heart? Units. The units which contract, relax together, treated as one unit because they are connected by gap junction. So how many units you have in the heart? How many units? Look, as you know from maybe your high school biology, the heart has how many chambers? Chambers? 4. Yes, 4 chambers. The 2 atria, left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle, 4. But the 2 atria contract together, relax together, because the atria are connected by gap junctions. They are coordinated. They act as a unit, one unit. The 2 ventricles connected by gap junctions. They contract and relax together, one unit. So in the heart, how many units you have? 2 units. The 2 atria, 1 unit. The 2 ventricles, 1 unit. Okay? So we have 2 units in the heart. In the GIT, if you look at the small intestine, okay, and also stomach, they are connected by gap junction. So they are treated as a single unit. That's why we said when the stomach distend, that leads to contraction of the intestine as a unit. The whole peristaltic movement will move down as a unit, unitary contraction. So, so that is the meaning of single unit. In the GIT, we have these single unit smooth muscles which contract and relax together. And also we have sometimes multi-unit. There are different units which contract and relax at different rates. Okay. The other thing is the contraction itself. If you look at contraction itself, sometimes it is phasic, sometimes it is tonic. What is the difference between phasic and tonic contraction? Phasic contraction means the contraction can increase or decrease depending on the stimulation. Phasic, for example, when you eat a food, a stomach distend, the contraction of the stomach increases. Is it phasic or tonic contraction? When you are not eating food, the contraction of the food is not intense, mild contraction. When the food reaches the stomach, contraction increases. This type of contraction is called phasic type of contraction. Phasic. Sometimes it increases, other times it decreases. Tonic. Tonic contraction means always in contracted state, tonically contracted. Where do you find this type of contraction? Always contracted. It open or it relax only